Hi there, this is Paula and Tammy. I'm back again, part two. This is actually discernment, so I actually will be speaking on discernment. And so I have a message from God. It's on discernment. So we'll get right to it. So discernment. Discernment sounds, it kind of like when you think of discernment, I want to kind of just distinguish, and because I know with myself, even though I know the difference, you could kind of confuse it with hearing the voice of God, and there is a difference. So discernment is more about picking up on, like on hidden truths. It's more about perception. It's more about how you see things, more about revelations of things. Where hearing the voice of God is actually God revealing something to you that you, in your natural, would have no way of knowing. So in the natural world, like God will reveal something to you that there's no way of you possibly knowing what it is he revealed to you. Basically, hearing his voice. It could be he could reveal something to you that you do know, of, but you are hearing his voice. I know in a lot of cases, like when God has revealed things to me, like he's revealing things to me that I have not, I haven't heard of, or if he's giving me directions, or he's telling me to turn right, or he's telling me to turn left. But it could be audible, like externally audible, but I mean, I've only had that once. But audibly internal, I've had that. Or the spirit would speak to me internally, where I can, in the spirit, like I can't describe that, like there's no words, but there's words coming out in the spirit, but it's basically him giving you a revelation about something. So it's God giving you a revelation, whereas discernment, God is involved in that as well, but it is about you. It's almost like, I like to think of discernment as almost like you're sniffing something, like like you can just sniff it, like you can just sniff the information, or like a puzzle or something. So it's almost like you're sniffing information, you're putting pieces together, you're seeing certain patterns, you're seeing certain things, and of course you are relying on certain senses, that are coming to you. And of course, the voice of God can also play a part in discernment as well. But it's almost like it's almost like an investigative kind of like mode, and that you're in, when you are dealing with discernment. And of course, discernment, the spirit of discernment, the gift of discernment, I should say, is coming from God. It is a gift from God, just like the gift of knowledge, the gift of wisdom. All of these are from God. So discernment is just, and understanding as well. Understanding is another one as well, which are all from God. So like, and how I like to look at it, it's almost like you're going into kind of like almost an investigative kind of mode, and in picking up things, and it can be entwined, with revelations from God as well, as to aspects of things that you were discerning. So when I talk about discernment, so I want to talk about discernment. First of all, first and foremost, is when we are discerning, discerning people, like when we're discerning relationships, and we're trying to figure out, like a relationship. You're dealing with people. You're dealing with, okay, can I trust that person? And your certain things are coming up about people. I know. I know for myself, this is something that I would say a lot, and I've heard people say this too, but this was something that I would say a lot. I say it less now, just because of my walk with God, and like the things that I've seen and whatnot. But I would always say, "Oh, I am such a good judge of character. I can just look at somebody and see if they're a nice person or if they're not a nice person, or if they're a person that I can trust, or if they're a person I can just look at them and know. And I'm sorry that no one can just look at someone and know. You can't, like I know that impressions are formed about people in the first 3 seconds that they see them. This is true, like how they're dressed. But just because an impression is formed about someone in 3 to 4 seconds, it doesn't mean that the impression that is formed is correct. So you can form an impression that someone is good and that person turns out to be very evil. You can form an impression that someone is very lazy and that person is very, like hands-on and very, like a workaholic. So we can form impressions by, seeing someone, and we do. But to rely on those impressions and to say, well, you know what, that person is dressed like that, therefore, like they're a slob, or therefore, like they're well kept. You can't, that doesn't not say anything. Just because we form impressions, that doesn't mean that the impressions that we have formed about the person that we are seeing is correct. So you can't go by that. And a lot of people unfortunately do. A lot of people, they look at people, or they even hear people say a few things. They see people with certain face, like some people may have like a stern type of face, and then they say, okay, that person is a mean person. Or they see someone with a very friendly, bubbly face, and then they think, oh, that person is a wonderful. And it can be vice versa for both. So it's very important to not just judge somebody by the first impression. Yes, we're going to form an impression because that's what we do, but not to judge somebody by the impression that we have formed, because we don't know what's going on in their heart. We don't know what their heart is like. Like I said, I did do that a lot. That was something I did. When I was, excuse me, when I was in college, I remember that there was this young guy, and okay, so the first semester in college, he I don't want to say he rubbed me the wrong way, because it wasn't anything that he did to me directly or anything, but he just came off as like he was standoffish. He was a standoffish person, and he came across as, he wasn't very, but he came across as condescending and just standoffish, and as if he only spoke to certain people. So, me and a few other people, we formed our impressions about him based on that. That we thought he was a little bit of a snob, and that he thought he was better than us, and that was the impression that I had of him. And so then the second semester came along. So second semester comes along, and of course, everyone's more comfortable with one another, because we've been with each other now for a while, and he became more friendly, and he was more friendly to me, and at at that time, like by the end, not even at the end, but just as the second semester continued and went on, I learned that this person was probably, I liked him. Probably, he was probably one of my favorite people in that program. One of my favorite, from first semester of thinking that I can't stand this person, really. I can't stand this person. This person comes off, he's very standoffish, he's very snotty, he's kind of condescending. He thinks that, that there's arrogance. And these were the things that I had, and I wasn't the only one. But in the second semester, it was like, oh my gosh, like getting to know him. He was one of my favorite people in that program. He was one of my favorite people in that program. He was a very super nice person, wonderful person when you got to know him. And so we did the Myers-Briggs. We did the Myers-Briggs what the Myers-Briggs, I can't think of the word, but anyway, so we did that, and so as we were doing that, he came out as an introvert, because they said, the introverts sit on one side, the extroverts sit on the other side. So, like, I'm an introvert, and so I'm like borderline introvert, borderline. So it's, I think, yeah, something like 51 introvert, 49 extrovert. So it's borderline. So he was the same. And so we're looking at him and we're like, oh my gosh, we never thought that were an introvert. And he's like, yeah, I'm an introvert. And so, you learn things like that about people because he didn't come across as an introvert. But then, like, I don't come across as an introvert, and I am an introvert as well. And so, but then again, and there are people like that. There are people who you meet and, you see them and they're introverts, but they don't come across as introverts. There are some people who come across as introverts, but they're actually extroverts. And so this is kind of like another thing of like not judging a book by its cover, so to speak. And so it was just fascinating. I mean, like, I digress, but my point is basically that through that whole revelation of, like all of that, he was one of my favorite people in the entire program. And I'm going to tell you, like, a lot of times, like I said, when I would judge people or I would prejudge people and think that this person is not the nicest or this person isn't the best person to be around. In a lot of cases, those have become the people who were my biggest supporters, the people who I could trust the most, the people who I could rely on the most. They came across as like some of them as like very, how can I put it? I'm trying to find a word for how I want to word this. Rough around the edges, but not all of them came across as rough around the edges. Some of them just came across as aggressive, and and that was how I looked at them. It's like, I want to stay away from these people, but these were the very same people who ended up being the type of people who would be in my corner, who would be in my back, and like have my back, and that's why. And so that's why it's so important to not say, I can just look, I can just sense, I can just know. Now, when God is revealing something to you about a person, that's different. That's not discernment. That's not you knowing. That's God revealing to you something about an individual. So that's not you looking at the person and knowing the person because of your discernment. That is a revelation that God Himself has spoken to you about the person. God has revealed something to you about the person. You know something about the person that you could have not known otherwise. But because God has revealed it to you, you now know it. That's not discernment. That is a revelation coming from the throne of God to you. But discernment is being able to piece things together. So sometimes, like if you could meet someone and you could have a bad vibe, you could feel something is off. And that is the Holy Spirit alerting you, warning you, red flag, stay away. So that is more of the Holy Spirit guiding you and letting you know. But at the same time, you could meet that same person and say, for example, God is not revealing something to you about that person in that way by the Holy Spirit actually telling you something about that person. But He will allow you to see certain traits in that person. So as, say, for example, you say hi to the person, you talk, and then you see certain like idiosyncrasies, certain behavior, certain things that they say. And as a result of that, you're discerning you're discerning from all of those things that are coming at you. You're picking up either a good vibe or a bad vibe based on everything that is being presented to you. So, the idiosyncrasies, the things that are being said, the behavior, and then you're beginning to pick up certain things on the individual. Then that becomes more discernment. Whereas, like I said before, if you feel like, oh my goodness, okay, I need to stay away from this person, then that is actually the Holy Spirit speaking to you, revealing something to you that you could have not known otherwise. So that's really the difference, even between like Holy Spirit speaking to you and discernment. Discernment is more like piecing things together, and discernment becomes really important, and it is really, really important, especially when like when we're meeting people, especially when we're dealing with people and when we're interacting with people, and we need to know, like, who, like who we're getting involved with, and what, what are the consequences of getting involved with that person. um Trying to think, there was something, oh, and I drew a blank because I really didn't think this. Like I said, I was trying to. Oh, I don't know if I even want to